Welcome to episode 23 of the Cows Report, your all-access pass to the people, ideas, and conversations shaping the future of college athletics. I'm Will Reese, Cows Director, and in today's big interview, Ryan Bradley sits down with Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill. Tom brings a perspective few leaders in college athletics can match, from becoming one of the youngest conference commissioners in NCAA history to serving as an FBS athletics director and Learfield executive, and now leading one of the nation's premier FCS conferences during a tremendous time of change in college athletics. Tom also shares important lessons for aspiring leaders about relationships, honest feedback, taking chances, and staying connected throughout your career. Now here's Ryan Bradley with Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill on the Cows Report, where the conversation continues long after the event ends.
It's time now for the big interview here on the Cows Report podcast. I'm Ryan Bradley, and I'm thrilled to be joined this month by the Commissioner of the Big Sky Conference, Tom Wistrcill. Tom, thanks for making time to be with us. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, Ryan. Great to be with you as well, and love what you guys are doing with the podcast. Appreciate you and Will connecting people together through Cows and the podcast as well.
Absolutely. Excited to dive into this conversation. I want to start by talking a little bit about your background and career arc. Your career has included a lot of different experiences and opportunities, everything from being an FBS athletic director to a campus administrator, a Learfield executive. How have those experiences shaped you and your leadership and the way that you're leading the Big Sky Conference today?
Yeah, thank you. I have an interesting background. Both my parents were coaches and teachers. My dad coached football for 30-some years, about half at the high school level, half at the Division II level. So I grew up on the practice field. I kind of always knew I'd be involved in sports. The question was how. Figured out early on in my career I wasn't going to be a pro athlete. So then it was like, do I want to coach? And then I was looking at my crazy parents and their lifestyles, like, all right, coaching, maybe that's not for me. So the way to stay involved was to get involved in administration. I fell in love with college athletics as an intern at the University of Minnesota, kind of right after college, and connected with Jeff Schemmel, who was an associate AD then, is still a great friend. And I'm going to come back to him in the story because I think that's an interesting feature to this. In 1993, I started as an intern at the University of Minnesota working for Jeff. A Division II commissioner. I was a Division III student athlete, basketball player, Division II commissioner, Division I AD, Division I commissioner. So I've kind of seen all different levels. All of that work has really helped form me as a person and as a worker. And, I think when you grow up around athletics, you think about it in certain ways, like it's a foundation for you as a person. Like you understand what it takes to be part of a team, what that team needs to do, how the individual pieces need to fit together to push that thing forward. And that's very much like a conference commissioner's role. So, I probably wasn't a very effective conference commissioner in my 20s at the Division II level. Hopefully I'm more effective now in my 50s at the Big Sky. But all of those experiences form you as a person and as a worker. And it's your job as an individual to kind of decide how you're going to handle those situations and let that background, kind of fill you up as you move forward. But every step along the way was a development piece for me.
You mentioned those stops as a commissioner at two Division II conferences. A former Division II AD here myself, always interested in that background and particularly getting an opportunity to lead in a capacity like that early in your career. What did those experiences working at the small college level teach you about leadership and building consensus amongst institutions with differing priorities?
The important thing it taught me in my 20s was a little bit of humble pie. You jump into, so I was 24 when I was named commissioner of the Northern Sun. I'll probably forever be the youngest commissioner in NCAA history after that. So, it's one of those things you jump in, you're like, all right, let's commission. What the heck does that mean? I don't know. So I called a bunch of other Division II commissioners, like, what do you do every day? I don't even know. So you learn quickly that you don't quite know as much as you think you might. And so you have to be willing to ask for help. you have to be willing to get some constructive criticism about the work you do, what you're doing, how you're doing it, the pace you're doing it. You got to be all in. You got to just jump off the dock into the lake and just figure out how to swim. And so that's what I was doing back then. A lot of listening, both from people at our conference schools, at the conference in Minnesota that I was running, but also through people at the NCAA headquarters that I met and stayed connected with for many years, that were leaders in Division II and still are leaders in Division II. So to me, that's, my foundation was built in the small college space, both as a D3 student athlete and a D2 commissioner. And I still rely on those traits and those experiences today.
I want to build on that a little bit in terms of what does a commissioner do. Not many people have the opportunity to sit in those chairs. You sat in several of them. So now, with many years of experience at different places under your belt, how do you describe what the role is and what the priorities are for a commissioner day to day?
So obviously the role has changed tremendously. Heck, this is my 8th year running the Big Sky, and my job has changed tremendously just in those 8 years. So, it's back to the finding how all the parts fit together. Ultimately, we in the Big Sky are going to be judged by how do we, do the blocking and tackling. The fundamental piece of running a conference has to happen in a really positive way. And then beyond that, how do we grow? So what do I mean by the fundamentals? I mean things like running championships, right? Award programs, helping our schools with compliance, basic scheduling of all our sporting events, and trying to, in a fair way, move things forward, right? So all of that is kind of the key part of running a conference, right? What are we going to do from a TV perspective? How do we market? How do we brand? How do we grow? So that's all the basic stuff. So then the second part of it is kind of what's next, right? So it's how do we find new revenue streams? I'm trying to generate. Every one of our schools, just like every Division I school, is under pressure financially. How do I move that needle forward? So everybody on our staff, and we have a staff, there's 11 of us at the Big Sky, so it's not a very big staff, but everyone is involved in how do we move things forward? How do we make it better? How do we make it more efficient? How do we drive additional revenue? What can we do to make sure that when a Big Sky football game is on ESPN2 Saturday night at 10 o'clock Eastern, what are we doing to make sure that everybody on the East Coast knows that Montana's playing Eastern Washington on Big Sky after dark, right? So those are things we think about, we dive into, we work with our schools, and that's what a commissioner's job is, to figure out where do you push and pull those levers day by day around the conference. Where are the rubs? Where are the positive things? And that's the beauty of the job. That's the thing that makes it fun, and the thing that gets you fired up every day. Our responsibility, our place in the college athletics stratosphere is to be the leading FCS conference. That's our role, our responsibility, and we lean into that every day. We have now coming this fall 13 FCS football playing institutions, counting our 2 affiliates. Every one of them has a goal of winning the national championship, and that's a wonderful goal to have. Last year, Montana State won the national title. They'll be preseason number 1. They're preseason number 1 in our conference polls as well. Everybody feels that responsibility, that goal of how do we get there? What do we do? What are we taking? What steps are we taking to try to achieve that goal? We also have incredibly broad-based programs around our conference, right? And my statement I've used for years is whenever there's a state name in your school, that means it's really important to that state. Well, we've got lots of those in our conference. So while while people might know us as a football conference, we also have lots of success around other sports as well, and have done well in volleyball and in softball and in track and field and cross country, and we lean into that as well. So there is a place for us in college athletics, mainly because of the schools we represent, but also because there's lots of conferences out there in the mid-major space that are leaning into who they are. There is, of course, a wide gap between the Big Ten and SEC and all these mid-majors that we're a part of. How we find our way is kind of our North Star. We've got some benefits to being out west. After the couple of the FBS conferences out here, it's us. We're the next one. And so it's very meaningful to what we do. Our schools embrace it and love the challenge of being the leading FCS conference.
Conference realignment has touched virtually all conferences in recent years, including yours, a recent departure, a couple of additions that you just alluded to. What did that period of transition and realignment teach you about the process of evaluating your membership and potential membership and being prepared for realignment when it starts to get to the point where it's knocking on your door?
Every commissioner right now and for years you really had to have your ear to the ground of, hey, what's going on? These shifting tides around everybody. And to your point, Ryan, we're not immune to that, right? So Sac State left. We kind of knew about a year ahead of time that Sac State they were so aggressive in trying to go FBS that we figured, hey, this was going to happen. So then it's a matter of, okay, what do we do? What do we do? We had an opportunity to not do a thing, right? And still be solid. But there were opportunities for us there to grow. There were opportunities for us to take a look at this and say, hey, what's in our footprint? Is the timing right? Can we grow? Can we get better? All of those factors go into it. I give our presidents a lot of credit because I came to our board fairly quickly. When I saw what was happening with the WAC, it was like, okay, we got these two schools in our footprint, Southern Utah, who'd been a member of our league and had left. And then Utah Tech, which was, a Division II program that had moved up to Division I and was still, had found their way, but was still kind of, settling in on being an FCS program. But there was an opportunity for us, a window where we could grab them, both of them, and strengthen our footprint out west. So I went to our presidents and said, hey, here's an opportunity. What do you think? It was a couple of conversations and they just said, Tom, go get them. And so both Mindy, the president of Southern Utah, and Shane, the president of Utah Tech, have been great partners. They dove right in with both feet and said, let's do it. And just like that, we went from 10 full-time members, lost 1 to 9, added 2 to 11. So we have 11 full-time members this fall, still with our 2 affiliates in California. So really excited to add people to our footprint, grow our business opportunities that way, and make a couple more drivable trips for our fans and our student athletes, which out here are hard to come by. Almost every trip seems to be a flight for people. So anytime you can add a couple of bus trips, that's a good thing as well.
Some institutions openly aspire to move to a different level or a different conference. Sacramento State, a great example of that, but not alone in that category by any stretch. How does a commissioner manage those ambitions of member institutions while also still protecting the collective interest of the league?
Communication is the key. And you have to be able to have really honest dialogue with the leadership of all your institutions. That comes back to the relationship, right? So they need to know that, you're in this with them. And so whether it's individually when I'm on campuses or together as a group, I just tackle that topic head on. I'm fortunate to having been a former FBS athletic director, a G6 AD. Our presidents know that I come from at least some knowledge of what the challenges are, the pros and the cons. If some of our schools are going to look at going to FBS, I just tell them, hey, here's the great things about it. And there are some really good things about it. They also need to have their eyes wide open to the downside as well. And so I talk to them frequently about that. I do believe at some point, we'll have some schools that have that opportunity that to be considered, could be offered opportunities. Who knows when that could happen? Could happen tomorrow. It could happen 2 years from now. But I just want them to have their eyes wide open to the pros and the cons, like I said, so they can make the best decision for them. My job is to look out for the entire conference. So I kind of weigh the balance of those discussions. But I also think our schools look to me as kind of their consultant for those opportunities as well. And that's why I'm really open and honest with them. And I want what's best for the Big Sky first, but I'm also willing to say I can help our schools make good decisions for themselves as well.
To put that into application a little bit, the Big Sky winter this fall with 11 full-time members, 13 football members. As you have those conversations with your presidents and your ADs, how do you determine if that's the right size, or if and we should be in stability mode and kind of working with the group that we now have in the fold, or how much of your time should be out there with your ear to the ground, exploring additional opportunities for growth and expansion?
Yeah, unfortunately, Ryan, the easy answer to that is I got to do all those things, right? So we're very comfortable entering this fall with 11 full-time members and 13. Odd numbers cause some problems in scheduling once in a while, but we were at these same numbers, about 6 years ago before Southern Utah left. So the odd numbers don't scare us. So I feel really good. We're not actively chasing any membership changes right now, but that could change tomorrow. And so you have to be thinking and ready for that, all the while moving all your chips in to say, we're in a really good place out west here. Like I said, our geography is a strength for us. It's a very positive thing. I think our schools are all in on what we're doing right now. But every day I got to do all of those things. Work with our current membership, think about what could happen, make sure that we're doing all the right things to position ourselves as the dominant FCS conference, and all the while being ready for what could come tomorrow. Who knows? Right now we're fully engrossed in everything that's happening in Congress, trying to get some help, and we'll wait and see where that leads us down a certain path. Who knows what tomorrow holds? But we got to be ready, and that's certainly my job to do that.
We're certainly in the rev share era. The wealthiest conferences are increasingly moving towards a professionalized model. In relation to all of that and what's transpiring, what do you see as the most sustainable path for FCS institutions and FCS conferences as we move into a completely different era, at least at the top end of Division I athletics?
I think sharing revenue is a wonderful thing. It's great for our student athletes. It's great for our enterprise. It's great that every school can make the decisions that's best for them. We'll all be opted in this fall. Every one of our schools will be doing some sort of revenue sharing. Some of them are sharing tens of thousands of dollars. Probably some are sharing hundreds of thousands of dollars. No one in the Big Sky is going to be near the cap, regardless of where it ends up. Whether it's at 22 million or something in Congress changes it to 50, 60 million, or let the top end conferences worry about that. For us, it's about educating our schools about how the process works, how working with the Collegiate Sports Commission happens, how the cap system is working and all of that. And then making sure that they each feel that responsibility and the opportunity to do what's best for them. And so, what you have right now is you have this system where, our best players at the FCS level are moving up to FBS because the money is so good. Well, we have a lot of FBS movers coming to our. So that movement, having maximum flexibility is really important for our member institutions. And so with our goals being very clear, being the dominant FCS conference, we just want to make sure we have the opportunities to move wherever we can. FCS football is going to survive regardless of how this works. There's roughly 130 of us playing FCS football, and that's probably going to stay very similar here in the future. There's too many schools like us out there that either can't afford to go FBS or don't want to go FBS. Very happy with where we're at. And so knowing that, then there's revenue sharing in other sports as well. And that's where each school can pick and choose what's important to them. A school like Northern Arizona, our conference, for example, they might revenue share more in track and cross country because they've been nationally competitive. They've won national championships in just the recent future in those sports. Whereas a school like Eastern Washington might lean into men's basketball, or Northern Colorado might lean into women's basketball. Or just using those as examples. And that's the beauty of the flexibility that comes with this revenue share model, that we're not forced to do things. We're able to do things that are comfortable, make choices that are best for us.
The Big Sky Conference has traditionally had programs that have succeeded through evaluation, talent development, continuity, and you see those programs as they mature compete at the national level for championships, as you just mentioned. How much harder is it to maintain that model of recruitment, development, continuity in this current landscape? And as it relates to the current challenges, what do you see as most important in terms of if we're going to get congressional intervention here to help maintain some sense of competitive there's not going to be a level playing field, but an opportunity for your teams to continue to have the opportunity to build and maintain competitive programs as they've done very well historically?
There's lots of things about the Protect College Sports Act that I really like. It's also missing a bunch of things. Go figure, it's not perfect, right? I think there's 32 commissioners who could agree with that. It's not perfect. I don't want to let the chase for perfect get in the way of the very good. There's very good things here for every conference, every school, every student athlete. The most important thing in my mind, as I talk about it with our membership at the Big Sky, is getting some type of management over the transfer portal. It is the most disruptive thing that I've encountered in my 8 years here, where a student athlete can go to 4 different schools in 4 different years. It's not good for the school. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for the team. And I don't believe it's any good for the student athlete at all. And I think that's back to our responsibility in higher education to say, what are we there for? We're there to serve the students, right? And by the fact that we're underneath that umbrella, the student athletes then as well. How do we best serve them, right? We best serve them at coming in as 18-year-olds and leaving as 22, 23-year-olds through education, through some challenges. Guess what? They got to fight through some things, right? That's okay. It's okay to do it in a safer environment within a college system, right? And to have some failures, to learn from that, to grow. And so if we get any legislation that can help that, give them one time to transfer, second time they got to sit out a year. If the legislation only did that, it would be a huge step forward for all of Division I athletics. There's a bunch of other things on there that we can discuss or argue about. 32 commissioners aren't going to agree on things. I get that. I think all of us could agree on that one point right there. And so then we can get back to the business that we got into this for. Okay. I got into college athletics because I loved supporting young people. College athletics was great for me as a person. It was great for my family. My dad was a college coach. I saw what it did for young people, and we got to get back to doing that. I think Tom Izzo talked about this a lot over the last few years about his frustration around not being able to help student athletes fight through adversity and get better. There's a lot of coaches that left the business. Dusty May. Why does Dusty May leave Michigan after winning the national title to go to Dallas, the Dallas Mavericks? I only know Dusty a little bit, but I think it's because of that. He's like, why do I want to do this when I can go to the NBA? They have a salary cap. They have contracts, and they can work with those players. In college athletics right now, we can't do that. And so there's lots we have to fix. To me, that's the number one most important thing, and I'll get behind any legislation that helps us do that.
Great insight. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about FCS football. What does the FCS model provide that is distinctive from the FES and worth protecting? Because you see, it's interesting to watch FBS football now move towards this expanded playoff that the FCS has been working on for many, many years. So obviously there are some lessons learned for FBS football that they can take some notes from FCS, but in terms of what distinguishes it and what's worth protecting, what does that look like from your seat?
I've talked to most of the FBS commissioners about the FCS playoffs. They've asked me, as they've had these CFP discussions, how does it work? And there's a few things that I've told them. The most important one that I've kind of harped on them about is there's a reason why in the FCS playoffs we play all home games until the national championship game. Financial reasons are certainly a part of it, yes. Also, it's a reward for the entire season to try to get those top seeds. Every game matters so much because it's really a huge deal if you get a home football playoff game, right? So they've got a problem with the bowl system they're trying to manage within that growth. That causes some problems for them. But FCS football is in a really strong place. It's in the best place it's been in my 8 years as a Division II, as a FCS commissioner. And the reason for that is the NCAA has done more to lean into it, right? We've gotten more playoff games on linear networks, on ESPN and ESPN2. We now have a championship game that is essentially fallen on a Monday night after the last Monday Night Football game, and the week before the CFP championship, so that it's a standalone football game. Last year, Monday night in Nashville was an incredible night it was the only football game on in the world. And so Montana State and Illinois State played an overtime game. Fortunately for us, the Bobcats won. But we're fortunate that we have 120, 130 teams, all very comfortable with this level. Obviously the way scholarships work now, people can, go up to the cap number. I don't think most of our schools are doing that around FCS. Playing within that 63 to 70 range probably is where most of our schools are, and allowing for revenue share. And the bottom line is you get to play for a trophy. Okay. I spent, as you know, 6 years as a G6 AD. At Akron, we were always trying to play to be the MAC champion, but we knew we didn't have a chance to win the national title. We weren't going to beat Ohio State in the playoffs. And so I love the fact that our teams get to play for a national championship. And that's the separator. Most, if not all of the G6, is not going to play for a national title. In fact, a number of FBS of the P4 aren't going to play for that title either. But, I would argue that half of that G6 should be playing FCS football. Them playing for a national title would be better for them and their fan base on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So maybe there's not as much money. The CFP pays money into those conferences, but what's the trade-off, right? Do you want that money with no hope of playing for a national title, or would you rather play against Montana or, Eastern Washington or UC Davis for a chance to play for the national championship? I would argue for us and our 13-member institutions, chasing that trophy is really, really important. And that's the beauty of FCS football for the 130 rough, odd teams that are doing that.
You bring up a really interesting point, particularly from the perspective of those G6 schools. Do you believe the distinction between the FBS and the FCS will continue to become more pronounced, or could you see another round of restructuring, particularly as it relates to the playoff postseason landscape in college football across FCS, G6, A4, and the way that those classifications are structured entirely?
From where I sit, that all is dependent upon the top. It's all dependent on what the SEC and Big Ten do. Right now we have two distinct championships, right? We have a CFP with the FBS programs. We have an FCS NCAA championship, right? The blending of that only happens, or the changes within that, if there's a change at the top. I don't pretend to, and my crystal ball is no clearer than yours or anyone else's to think what that would look like if the top two conferences break away. Could that happen? Absolutely. Could they make it work? You bet. I listened to Greg Sankey's comments the last few days about the SEC, and I believe there are discussions going on in there. I've got friends that in that room that say, yeah, there are presidents who are really thinking about what if we left. There's a lot that goes into that. And, that would force, if that happened, if two conferences left and formed their own playoff, that would force then the Big 12 and ACC to decide what to do along with the G6. And so could there be some blending there? Could there be a middle ground there where the top of FCS joins something? I think that's something that could be discussed. We would be interested in those discussions, all the while saying we're really happy with where we're at. And like I said, I like the fact that we can play for a championship trophy, a national championship trophy. And so, like I said, Ryan, I think we have to lean into it and keep finding ways to make that more valuable, all the while keeping an eye on what's happening around us. But I don't think we're the decision makers in any of that. I think that falls on Greg and Tony and Brett and Jim, the P4 commissioners, to determine what the future of that CFP looks like, how schools can be a part of it, and what that looks like moving forward.
I want to switch gears and talk about basketball for a minute. Among the many hats that you've worn throughout your career, one was as a member of the Division I men's basketball committee. What do coaches, administrators, and fans misunderstand most about the selection process?
It's been fun being on that committee. I got 1 year left, so this will be my last and fifth year on the committee. I think the biggest misconception people have is that anybody brings the conference bias into that room. That is the most rewarding part of the experience, the relationships you form in that room with everybody. But everybody's treated the same. I've never once heard the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, Big 12 people in there say, here's what's best for my conference. Here's why I need this in there. Never. No one would ever do that. I mean, that's just a violation of the ethical process that has been set up for decades from that committee. That didn't just start just recently. That's been a part of that for a long time. And so we argue, we discuss, we take breaks when arguments get a little tense. But it's never, hey, here's what's best for the mid-majors. I don't wear my Big Sky hat in there. I dress like this with no conference logo. Nobody wears any school stuff. Nobody wears any conference stuff in there. You're 12 people trying to do what's best for college basketball, to select those best at-large teams and to look at their resumes and to talk about who challenged themselves and who didn't. And so it's the best room I've ever been in for that. No one brings in where their paycheck comes from into that room. And I think you could ask any member and they would say that exact thing. Most people think there's the misconception up there that the SEC person, in this case, it's been Greg Byrne the last few years, right, at Alabama. Never once have I heard Greg say anything about the SEC, about Alabama, anything against Auburn. That just doesn't happen in that room. And so that's the biggest misconception out there.
So you don't wear your Big Sky hat into the NCAA men's basketball selection committee room. But I would imagine you take much of what you glean from the conversations and the decision-making process in that room back to your role as the Big Sky Commissioner, especially when you're talking to your head coaches and your ADs about building that resume and what is going to make the difference in terms of the cut line and their opportunities to be considered as an at-large. So what have you gleaned from that process that's helped you inform and give direction to those schools to help them better position themselves for an opportunity?
One of the things I've really enjoyed from being part of that committee is not only within the Big Sky, but I've joined other conferences on a Zoom call with their coaches or their administrators talking about how to right-size scheduling from a mid-major standpoint. And one of the things that I've developed over time is it's kind of almost a 3-prong approach that I suggest all mid-majors do, the mid-major conferences. You have to kind of split your schools up into your best teams, your average teams, and your poor teams. Your best teams need to play the very best schedule they can, the very best teams they can schedule. If they can get them at home, that's great. But if they can get them on a neutral court, that's really good as well, because they need a couple of those wins make such a huge difference in how their team sheet looks to the committee. Those are your best teams. They need to schedule their best. The middle group need to schedule 1 or 2 of those games to try to find a way to get some type of win that's probably a top 150, whether that's neutral, home, away, whatever. Getting that type of thing, that's the middle group. The bottom group, D1 wins against anyone. Rising tide lifts all ships from that conference, okay? So back to the team sheet. So when a team is considered, they come up, we have, these 4 screens in front of us. Their team sheets come up on screens 1 and 2, and we're comparing team A to team B. The first thing we're looking at is their non-conference. Who did they play? Where did they play them? How did they do? So anything that benefits them on that team sheet, depending upon which of those 3 groups you're in, if you're looking at large for a mid-major, you're probably not looking at that bottom group. So the bottom group's job is just to keep that rising tide so that their net and WOB ranking is high enough it doesn't hurt that top team that we're comparing. And so that's what I tell mid-major conferences is that's how you want to encourage your teams to schedule, because when it comes down to it, the reason they're going to appear on our screens is because of their full body of work. And we know who they played in the conference schedule. Chances are they probably won most of those games we're not looking at large. So then it's back to their non-conference. And how did they do against those teams who also could be considered for an at-large? That's what I tell our coaches, and that's what I would tell every mid-major conference.
We're on the cusp of expanding the NCAA tournament for the first time in a long time. What is the perfect number in your mind for what the tournament field should look like, and what are you hopeful for in terms of tangible outcomes for mid-majors from the Big Sky or elsewhere in terms of more access to the tournament moving forward?
I'm really excited about what we've done moving to 76 for this coming year. Who knows what it's going to look like? We modeled a bunch of different things, but you never know until you're in the room and looking at those teams. Some years we've had lots of bid stealers, and so the bubble's been really strong. Other years we've had no bid stealers, and so the bubble is kind of weak. So who knows what that's going to look like? I'm really encouraged by opportunities. It was set up in a way where the smallest percentage of NCAA qualifiers of any championship was men's and women's basketball. And that just doesn't sound right. So it was easier to get in the volleyball tournament or soccer tournament or the baseball tournament than it was basketball. That doesn't sound right. So the expansion really changes the first 2 days of the tournament from the men's side. And then after that, no one will notice any difference. Studies have shown in the 10 years we looked at, 20% of the at-large bids would go to non-P5 leagues. And by P5, I mean the P4 and the Big East. I'm including the Big East in there because they get so many at-large bids. 20% of those opportunities will go potentially to a Big Sky school or to the Sun Belt or Conference USA or something like that, right? So we just have to make sure that if we're in a place to get those, we go get it. But any expansion of that was good for mid-majors because 20% is better than 0. And that's where we were at. So time will tell. I encourage people not to throw out, if this year, who knows what it looks like. I always look at these things in kind of 3-year time frames. Let's give this 3 years and see how it works before we evaluate it. I'll be off the basketball committee by then, so it'll be new people. But let's not just judge it based upon 1 year. What I do know, it creates more opportunities for us, creates more opportunities for mid-majors. And yeah, is a team like Auburn last year going to get in? Yes, they are. But the bottom line is let's lean into this. Let's see how it works, and let's give it a few years to evaluate it.
Okay, we got just a few minutes left, so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about leadership and professional development. We've got a good core, as you know, of aspiring athletic administrators, future ADs, future commissioners that are part of the CALS audience. So for them, gain a few more insights into lessons learned from you, starting with communication and consensus building, which is something I'm sure you do every single day. You're working with a lot of different constituents. The last few years, you've been navigating a lot of uncertainty, whether it was with the COVID pandemic and now all the volatility within the industry and college athletics overall. How do you go about creating consensus and driving towards the best possible decision with the information you have at the time, knowing that everybody's got their own perspectives and there's no clear path on a lot of the things that you're navigating as a leader in today's environment?
No, you're absolutely right, Ryan. And I think a lot of people, when you're young, you think leadership, is just kind of this straight line, like that. But that's not what it is. It's like this, and you have to be willing to listen. You have to really have an open mind to opportunities. Yet I still think it's important for you to have kind of a North Star. Kind of if you keep the end in mind, and I'm talking about whether this is your career or whether it's commissioner of the Big Sky Conference. Okay, where do we want to get to? What does that look like? And yeah, I might have detours and setbacks and those types of things, but what ultimately are we trying to get to? And in a conference office, we spend a lot of time talking about, hey, that might be really good for this school, but it's not good for these 5 schools. Okay, so what is there a middle ground there that's helpful to everybody? Is that even an option? Is it a good option, a bad option? You have to be really honest. You have to be really thorough in your discussion. And then at the end, when a decision is made, you have to be really clear as to what that decision is, why we're doing that, and how do we clearly communicate that way in a way that our constituents at the schools, as well as our fans or the public or the media, can understand it. They may not agree with it, but they understand what happened. And so that's just really important. Something I've learned over time. I feel like I've gotten better at that. I know I'm better at it now, 30 years later than when I was a D2 commissioner 30 years ago. But that takes a while. And that's, you got to have a really good evaluation on your strengths and weaknesses.
Knowing that, what do you believe are some of the qualities that are most important for the next generation of athletic directors and conference commissioners?
So, networking is really important. And at the beginning of this pod, I said I was going to come back to this. So as you remember, Ryan, I said I got started as an intern under Jeff Schemmel at the University of Minnesota in 1993. Well, in 2018, 25 years later, Jeff Schemmel is a consultant with his own business, and he gets the search for the Big Sky Commissioner's job. And he calls me, and I'm a senior VP at Learfield in Dallas. He calls me and said, hey, I think I got a really good opportunity for you. So what's the moral of that story, right? Jeff and I have stayed good friends for 25 years. So he gets the search as a search consultant for the Big Sky. He's probably thinking about who's going to be a good candidate, and my name pops into his head. So there is a lesson learned there to stay connected with people in a way that isn't you just calling them saying, hey, what jobs do you know? But in a way that can be meaningful for them and for you. And so, a communication is really important, but who you communicate with is really important. And so having that foundation around the business and lean into things and find new opportunities, be willing to say yes, get outside your comfort zone. Again, I don't know anyone's career path that it was just, a straight line, right? I had different detours. I was at different levels. I'm, open to jump to things I didn't know I'd ever do. I didn't know I'd ever live in Salt Lake City, Utah as commissioner of the Big Sky. That wasn't a plan when I was commissioner of the Northern Sun in 1994. You just never knew. I loved each step along the way, but you have to be willing to take on some things that maybe feel uncomfortable to you. And so, I encourage the young people out there who want to be an aspiring AD or commissioner, You have to be willing to go wherever, to do lots of things, to meet lots of people. And the most important thing you're going to do is you're going to learn about yourself, what you're good at. And you have to be honest about that. I'm good at these things. I'm not so good at these things. How do I get a little better at these? How do I take these from good to great? And I've found there's lots of people along the way that'll help you. Got to be willing to ask for some help and then take some honest feedback on your journey.
That's great advice. You've been really kind over the years to donate your time and your experiences to CALS and the CALS community. How important are events like CALS to building those relationships and learning from both your peers and those who maybe are a step or two ahead of you in their career arc? Probably
the most important thing you can do as a young person is go to these events and decide, hey, here's 5 people I want to meet, or I'm going to come away from there with 5 contacts that I can stay connected with and ask questions and have those people. People are really willing to help if you ask, can I send you my resume? Can you take a look at it? Give me some feedback. Hey, there's this job open at, pick a school, Tennessee. Do you think I could be a fit for that job? Or there's a job open at the Big Ten, or, and ask people those questions. Again, then you got to be willing to take that honest feedback, and you might not like it, but you got to be willing to take that honest feedback. Here's what you need to work on, or not too big a jump for you, or something like that. But the people that follow through are kind of few and far between, and the ones that really want to be successful, they develop those types of relationships that pay off in the future. They two-way relationships there. But I've found that, more often than not, people have been really willing to help. And CALS has been a great partner for that because it opens up those doors naturally.
It's awesome. And again, we appreciate so much your willingness to come and be involved year after year. All right, we're almost out of time. I'm going to get you out of here on this. You recently re-upped with the Big Sky and announced your intentions to continue in the role through 2030. What led to that decision, and what do you ultimately hope that folks will think and believe about the Big Sky and how it has developed and grown during your tenure leading the league as commissioner?
I love the Big Sky. I love what we stand for. I like to say we're the true college athletics right now because it's not all about how much money can our student athletes make. And so we lean into that. We love that, love playing that role. We have a great group of schools where things are really important in their communities, in their states. So that's an exciting part of the opportunity. It's an ever-changing world right now, so I feel a responsibility to be a leader around college athletics in my role as commissioner of the Big Sky, both at the commissioner's level and then also at the national level as well. I work for a great group of presidents who care about the right things, and ultimately I want to leave the place better than I found it. And, I'm excited about that opportunity over the next 4 years to do that. And then we'll decide what it looks like after that. But I'm really fortunate to be a part of a great conference and a great group of people.
Well, Tom, we want to congratulate you on all your success and wish you and the Big Sky more success in the year to come, because it's almost that time, believe it or not. Summer has come and gone, and the fall seasons are upon us. So we wish you the very best. Again, thank you for making time in the middle of your busy schedule to visit with us and to share some insights and lessons learned with the CALS community. I know there's going to be a lot of great takeaways from our conversation today.
Thanks for listening to episode 23 of the CALS Report. A big thank you to Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill for joining us, and to Ryan Bradley for leading another thoughtful conversation. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and share the CALS Report on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also follow us on social media at 80 Symposium on X, at the CALS Report on Instagram and LinkedIn, and for more information, go to our website, 80symposium.us. Until next time, stay connected, stay encouraged, and keep leading the way in college athletics.